On August 10, 2023, at 2:47 in the morning, Surrey police in England received a phone call that would expose one of the worst child protection failures in recent UK history. The caller was in Pakistan, 5,000 miles away. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "I've killed my daughter," he said. "I legally punished her, and she died." He told the operator where to find her. Then he admitted, "I beat her up too much." When officers arrived at the family home in Woking, they found 10-year-old Sara Sharif's body in a bunk bed, covered with a blanket. Next to her was a handwritten note. "I am Irfan Sharif. I killed my daughter by beating." But here's what makes this case so devastating. Sara didn't die in secret. She died in plain sight. 15 times, warning signs were reported. 15 times, the system had a chance to save her. And 15 times, it chose paperwork over protection. I'm George, and this is True Crime Buff HQ, where we seek justice for the voiceless. Before we begin, here's what you'll learn in this video. The early warning signs everyone missed. How social services and schools failed to act. What investigators discovered inside the family home. The trial, the verdict, and the public outrage. How many other UK children are being failed right now? And what you can do if you suspect a child is in danger. This isn't just Sara's story. It's a mirror held up to a broken system. And by the end, you'll understand exactly how many chances were squandered before it was too late. Before we continue, a content warning. This case involves child abuse. We'll focus on the facts and the system failures, not graphic details. If you need to step away, please do. Let's get into it. Sara Sharif was born on January 11, 2013, in Slough, Berkshire. Her mother was Polish. Her father, Irfan Sharif, was a Pakistani taxi driver who had moved to the UK in 2001. Those who knew Sara described her as beautiful, bubbly, full of personality. She loved to sing. She loved to dance. Her teachers said she had a lovely smile that could light up a room. She was, by all accounts, a normal little girl who deserved a normal, safe childhood. She didn't get one. Sara's family was already on the radar of Surrey County Council's Children's Services before she was even born. In 2010, 3 years before Sara existed, her father was already flagged for domestic violence against Sara's mother. Let me repeat that. The system knew this family was dangerous before Sara took her first breath. In 2011, Sara's older siblings were placed on child protection plans after reports of domestic abuse and unexplained injuries. Surrey police even disclosed to social services that Irfan Sharif had previous allegations of false imprisonment of women. And yet, in 2019, when Sara was just 6 years old, she was placed in the custody of her father and his new wife, Bainash Batul. Now, here's where the red flags started appearing. And I mean bright red, impossible-to-miss flags. In 2021, Sara, now 8 years old, suddenly started wearing a hijab. No one else in her family wore one. Not her stepmother, not her aunts, just Sara. The school was told it was Sara's choice, a cultural decision. And because no one wanted to seem culturally insensitive, no one questioned it further. But that hijab wasn't about religion. It was about hiding the bruises on her face and head, the injuries that were accumulating, week after week, month after month. Let that sink in. In June 2022, staff at Sara's school noticed a bruise under her left eye. Sara said a younger sibling caused it. Her stepmother backed up the story. The school accepted the explanation and moved on. No referral to children's services, no follow-up. By early 2023, the bruises weren't so easy to ignore anymore. March 2023, Sara is now 10 years old. She's in year 5 at her primary school in Woking. One day, a teacher notices something alarming. Sara has 3 separate bruises on her face. One is described in school records as the size of a golf ball. Sara explains that her sibling punched her, but the teacher isn't convinced. On March 10, 2023, the school enters a report into their child protection monitoring system and sends a referral to Surrey County Council's Children's Services. This is it. This is the moment, the last real chance to save Sara's life. 6 days later, the case is closed. Let me walk you through what happened, or more accurately, what didn't happen. A social worker was assigned to investigate, but that social worker never contacted Surrey police to check for any history with the family. They never spoke to Sara's school to get more context. Instead, the social worker visited the home, spoke to Sara's father, and believed his story. Sara Sharif told the social worker that Sara had lots of marks on her body because of all the medical machinery she was hooked up to when she was born prematurely. That story? Completely false. Sara wasn't born prematurely. There were no machines. It was a lie. But because the social worker didn't check Sara's medical records, didn't speak to her teachers, didn't contact the police, the case was marked as no further action and filed away. Now, here's what makes this even worse. Remember I said the family had been known to Children's Services since 2010? That's 13 years of institutional knowledge, 13 years of reports, concerns, domestic abuse allegations. But somehow, none of that history was flagged when this new referral came in. The system didn't connect the dots. It didn't even look for the dots. And then, in April 2023, just weeks after that referral was closed, Sara's father did something very calculated. He told the school he was withdrawing Sara to homeschool her, effective immediately. And just like that, Sara disappeared from professional view. Now, in the UK, parents have the legal right to homeschool their children. There's no requirement for a formal meeting with school officials or social workers, even if the child was previously known to Children's Services. Sara's school was concerned. They contacted Children's Services again to report the withdrawal. They were told to only re-refer if there was an immediate risk of harm. An immediate risk of harm. As if the bruises, the suspicious explanations, the sudden homeschooling weren't enough. And Sara wasn't the only one who noticed what was happening. Her neighbors heard it too. One neighbor later testified in court that they heard constant screaming and crying coming from the Sharif home. They heard banging. They heard what sounded like children rattling a door, desperately trying to get out of a locked room. They heard Bainash Batul, Sara's stepmother, screaming hysterically at the children using abusive language. That neighbor once asked Batul if everything was okay. The door was slammed in their face. Another neighbor heard what sounded like smacking, followed by a child screaming. And do you know what they did? They convinced themselves everything was fine. One of them said they were told by others to mind your own business and ignore it. So they did. They minded their business, and Sara continued to suffer. By late July 2023, Sara's case had been escalated for a home education welfare visit. Someone from the council was finally going to check on her, see how she was doing, make sure homeschooling was actually happening. The visit was scheduled for August 7, 2023. But here's the problem. The council sent the social worker to the family's old address, the one they'd moved out of months earlier. When the worker realized the mistake, the visit was rescheduled for September. Sara Sharif was murdered on August 8, 2023. One day after someone knocked on the wrong door. We may never know the exact details of Sara's final hours, but we know this. On August 8, 2023, in a house in Woking, Surrey, 10-year-old Sara Sharif was killed by the two people who were supposed to protect her. That night, Sara's stepmother, Bainash Batul, booked one-way plane tickets to Pakistan for herself, Irfan Sharif, Sara's uncle Faisal Malik, and Sara's 5 younger siblings. They left the next morning, August 9th, less than 24 hours after Sara died. Think about that. They packed bags. They got 5 children ready. They went through airport security. They boarded a flight to Islamabad, all while Sara's body lay in a bunk bed in their home, covered with a blanket. And then, after they landed in Pakistan, after they were safely 5,000 miles away, Sara Sharif made that phone call to Surrey police. During the 8.5-minute call, he told the operator, "I legally punished her, and she died." He said he beat her up too much, but claimed it wasn't his intention to kill her. He refused to say where he was calling from. When officers arrived at the family home on August 10th, they found Sara's body in a bunk bed. She was wearing a pink and gold dress. There were signs of violence everywhere. Next to her body was a handwritten note. "I am Irfan Sharif, father of Sara Sharif. I killed my daughter by beating." What happened next was a coordinated international manhunt involving Surrey Police, Interpol, the Foreign Office, the National Crime Agency, and Pakistani authorities. For over a month, Irfan Sharif, Benash Batul, and Faisal Malik remained in Pakistan with the 5 surviving children. They were tracked, monitored, pressured. On September 13, 2023, they voluntarily flew back to the UK. As they disembarked at Gatwick Airport, police were waiting. All 3 were arrested on suspicion of murder. And that's when investigators began to piece together the full horror of what Sara had endured. The post-mortem examination revealed that Sara had suffered approximately 100 separate injuries, both internal and external. She had a traumatic brain injury, multiple broken bones in 25 different locations, including fractures to her neck, vertebrae, spine, and hand. There was extensive bruising and scarring all over her body. She had been burned deliberately with a domestic iron on her buttocks. Her feet had been scalded with hot liquid. There were human bite marks. Let that settle. Pathologists testified that these injuries weren't from one incident. This was a sustained campaign of abuse, weeks, possibly months. And here's the part that will haunt you. 2 days before Sara died, someone in that house filmed a video of her. In the video, Sara is dancing, smiling, moving to music. At that exact moment, she had multiple broken bones. She had burn wounds that had been left untreated. She was in unimaginable pain, and she was still dancing. That's who Sara was. Even in the worst moments of her life, she was still a child who loved to dance.
My dear friend, before we continue with Sara's story, I need to ask you to take several important actions right now. Please hit the like button on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And most importantly, share this story. Every single share reaches more people who might recognize these warning signs and save a child. That's not hyperbole. That's the reality of why we do this work. In the comments below, I'd like you to write your city and what time you're watching this. This helps me understand when it's best to publish similar investigations so they reach the maximum number of people and potentially save children's lives. If you'd like to support this channel's mission even further, you can leave a super thanks below this video or consider joining as a channel member. Your support allows us to continue bringing you these critical investigations, stories about children who needed protection but didn't get it. Each investigation we produce is not just a story about tragedy. It's a lesson in recognizing dangerous situations. It's training for every viewer who watches. Be sure to watch the other videos on this channel, because knowing about cases like Sara's could one day help you notice warning signs and protect a child who's in danger. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough to watch to this point. Now, let's continue with what happened after Sara's death and what investigators discovered when they finally looked closely.
On October 7, 2024, Irfan Sharif, Benash Batul, and Faisal Malik went on trial at the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court in London. The trial lasted 10 weeks, and during those 10 weeks, the full extent of Sara's suffering was laid bare in front of a jury. All 3 defendants initially pleaded not guilty to murder. They all denied causing or allowing Sara's death. Irfan Sharif's strategy at first was to blame his wife, Baynash Batul. He claimed he was at work when the abuse happened. He said he had no idea what was going on in his own home, but prosecutors presented a devastating timeline. Using mobile phone data, work records, car location data, and bank card usage, they proved that all three adults were present during the period when Sara's injuries were inflicted. And then, 3 weeks into the trial, something extraordinary happened. Sara Sharif took the stand and completely changed his story. He admitted that he had tied Sara up with tape. He admitted he had beaten her with a cricket bat, a metal pole, and a mobile phone. He admitted he had throttled her with his hands. When asked why he suddenly changed his testimony, he said, "She was my daughter. I've been nasty. I've been mean with her. I couldn't care for her. I didn't do what a father should have done. I'll take responsibility for everything." Prosecutors argued this was a calculated move, an attempt to protect Baynash Batul from a murder conviction by taking sole blame. But the jury didn't buy it. The evidence showed all three adults had played a role in Sara's death, either through direct violence or by allowing it to happen. On December 11, 2024, the jury returned with their verdicts. Sara Sharif, guilty of murder. Baynash Batul, guilty of murder. Faisal Malik, not guilty of murder but guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child. 6 days later, on December 17th, they were sentenced. Sara Sharif was given life in prison with a minimum term of 40 years. Baynash Batul was given life with a minimum of 33 years. Faisal Malik received 16 years for his complicity. Judge's words, Justice John Kavanaugh, in his sentencing remarks, described Sara as a beautiful little girl, full of personality, who was also a very courageous little girl with an unquenchable spirit. He said her death was the result of years of neglect, frequent assaults, and what can only be described as the torture of this small child. He also said this: Sara's despicable treatment took place in plain sight of the rest of the family. In plain sight. After the verdict, an independent safeguarding review was launched. The goal: figure out how Sara slipped through the cracks. Identify the failures. Make recommendations so it never happens again. The review's conclusion? Sara Sharif was failed by the safeguarding system. Let me give you the numbers. The family had been known to Children's Services since 2010, 13 years. There were at least 15 documented warnings about Sara's safety. Social Services had contact with the family multiple times, but described their involvement as limited and historic. The referral in March 2023 was closed in 6 days, without contacting police, without consulting the school. The home education welfare visit was sent to the wrong address the day before Sara was killed. The review found that despite all the information available across the system, quote, opportunities were lost to join up all the dots and recognize the dangers faced by Sara. But here's the bigger question. Why does this keep happening? Sara Sharif isn't an isolated case. In the UK, there's a grim pattern. Baby P. Victoria Climbié, Arthur Labinjo Hughes, Star Hobson. All of them were known to social services. All of them had visible injuries. All of them died anyway. Between April 2023 and March 2024, just 1 year, 485 children in England either died or suffered serious harm due to abuse or neglect. So, what's going wrong? First, underfunding. Since 2010, funding for early intervention services in the UK has been cut by nearly 50%. That means fewer resources to identify at-risk families before a crisis hits. Second, staffing shortages. In 2024, the UK government raised the shortage of social workers to a critical risk level. Social workers are managing impossible caseloads. They're overworked, underpaid, and burning out. Third, fear of overreach. After high-profile cases where children were wrongly removed from homes, there's institutional fear of being too aggressive. Agencies are terrified of breaching parents' rights, so they err on the side of caution. But in Sara's case, caution meant death. And then there's the homeschooling loophole. In the UK, there's no registry of homeschooled children, no mandatory oversight, no requirement for welfare checks. Sara's killers used this loophole to hide her from view in the final months of her life. After Sara's death, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the case awful and said the government would learn from it. A member of Parliament proposed Sara's Law, legislation that would require formal meetings between parents and professionals before a child known to social services can be homeschooled. The Children's Commissioner for England, Dame Rachel D'Souza, said Sara's death is a heartbreaking reminder of the profound weaknesses in our child protection system that, as a country, we have failed time and time again to correct. She added, "We have been here before, and each time we have said, never again. But here we are, again."
Sara Sharif's story is a tragedy, but it's also a warning. Right now, there are children living in homes where they're not safe, where they're being hurt, where they're crying for help, and no one is listening. So here's what you can do. If you're in the UK and you suspect a child is being abused, call the NSPCC helpline at 0808 800 5000. It's free and confidential. Contact your local children's services directly. If a child is in immediate danger, call 999. If you're in the US, call the Child Help National Abuse Hotline, 1-800-4A-CHILD, 1-800-422-4453. Contact your local child protective services. Don't second-guess yourself. Don't worry about overreacting. Don't convince yourself it's none of your business. Sara's neighbors heard her screaming. They heard the violence, and they did nothing because they didn't want to interfere. Don't be a bystander. Be the person who makes the call. Sara Sharif loved to sing. She loved to dance. She had a smile that lit up a room. She was 10 years old. The system failed her. Her neighbors failed her. The adults in her life failed her. But we can honor her memory by demanding better, by holding agencies accountable, by speaking up when something feels wrong. Sara's voice was silenced, but ours don't have to be. The least we can do is say her name, tell the truth, and fight for a system that chooses children over its own reputation. Rest in peace, Sara Sharif. You deserved so much better.